It was a quiet morning in the little town of Willow Creek. The sun had barely risen, casting a soft golden glow over the familiar streets, when Henry and Margaret, a couple in their late 70s, quietly stepped out of their small, cozy home. Life had settled into a comfortable rhythm for them over the years, morning tea by the garden, short walks through the park, and long afternoons spent reminiscing about the decades they had shared. But yesterday, something in the air felt different. There was a sense of excitement neither could quite explain, a spark that had lain dormant for far too long. Henry adjusted his wide-brimmed hat and glanced at Margaret, who was fastening her scarf with a gentle, practiced motion. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice a mixture of curiosity and nervousness. Margaret smiled, her eyes twinkling with the same mischievous light that had first drawn him to her 55 years ago. "I've never been more sure," she replied. "And I think it's about time we did something for ourselves, don't you?" The plan had been spontaneous. Just the night before, over cups of chamomile tea, Margaret had suggested an old idea she had tucked away in her mind for years: a small road trip across the countryside, visiting towns they had never seen, and stopping wherever the road led them. At first, Henry hesitated, recalling their previous quiet routines and the comfort of their home. But Margaret's infectious enthusiasm won him over. By dawn, their bags were packed with essentials: a few sandwiches, a thermos of coffee, and a well-worn map marked with places neither had ever visited. As they drove out of Willow Creek, the streets slowly gave way to rolling hills and green pastures. Margaret hummed softly to herself, a song from their youth, and Henry reached over to squeeze her hand. "I can't remember the last time we did something this spontaneous," he admitted, a smile tugging at his lips. "It feels alive," Margaret said, glancing out at the horizon where the morning mist clung to the trees like a soft veil. Their first stop was a small lakeside village tucked away between two hills. The town seemed frozen in time, with cobblestone streets and little shops that smelled of fresh bread and coffee. They wandered through the market, sampling cheeses and handmade pastries, and chatted with the local shopkeepers who shared stories of the town's history. Margaret bought a delicate ceramic bowl, while Henry found an old leather-bound journal that caught his eye. The simple joy of exploring something new together reminded them of the early days of their courtship, when the world felt full of endless possibilities. By mid-afternoon, they reached the scenic viewpoint atop a gentle hill. The view took their breath away. Fields of gold stretched as far as the eye could see, dotted with wildflowers swaying in the breeze. Henry, ever the photographer in his younger days, took out his camera and captured the moment, while Margaret leaned against him, soaking in the serenity. "It's funny," Margaret said, "how we've lived so long, and yet there are still so many places to see, so many experiences waiting for us." Henry nodded. "Life's a lot like this view," he replied. "You think you've seen everything, but there's always more just over the next hill." As the day turned to evening, they checked into a quaint inn with ivy crawling up its stone walls. The innkeeper, a cheerful woman named Eleanor, welcomed them as if they were old friends. She prepared a simple dinner, and the couple dined by the fireplace, the flames casting a warm glow over their faces. They shared stories of their youth, of travels they had never taken, and of dreams they had once thought impossible. The conversation flowed effortlessly, a reminder of why they had spent a lifetime together, weathering every storm side by side. The following morning, they rose early to catch the sunrise. Wrapped in scarves and holding steaming mugs of tea, they watched the sky shift from indigo to shades of pink and orange. "Remember when we used to chase sunrises?" Margaret asked softly. Henry chuckled. "I remember," he said, "though we usually ended up sleeping through them." They laughed together, a sound that carried the weight of years, love, and shared memories. Their journey took them to small farms, hidden waterfalls, and quiet villages where the pace of life was slower and more deliberate. They met other travelers, swapped stories, and occasionally sat in silence, simply enjoying the beauty around them. Each day was a reminder that life's adventures were not reserved for the young. They were for anyone willing to step outside comfort and embrace the unknown. One afternoon, they came across a meadow filled with wildflowers. Margaret twirled in the breeze, laughing like a child, and Henry couldn't resist joining her. For a few hours, they wandered, picked flowers, and laid on the grass, watching clouds drift lazily across the sky. "This is what it feels like to truly live," Margaret said, her hand resting over Henry's heart. "It's more than just existing, isn't it?" Henry nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "Yes," he said. "It's moments like this that make all the ordinary days worthwhile." As their journey neared its end, they reflected on the days they had shared. They realized that the adventure was not just about the places they had seen, but about rediscovering each other, reigniting the sense of wonder that had once brought them together. They had laughed harder, explored farther, and cherished more deeply than they had in years. The trip reminded them that life's greatest adventure is the love and connection we nurture with those we hold dear. On the final evening, they returned home, tired but fulfilled. Their home, once familiar in its quiet routine, now felt different, richer, somehow, filled with the echoes of laughter, shared secrets, and newfound memories. Sitting on their porch, holding hands as the stars emerged overhead, Margaret whispered, "Yesterday, we started an adventure no one expected, and it was the best decision we ever made." Henry smiled, squeezing her hand gently. "Here's to many more," he said. And in that simple moment they knew that the adventure of life, much like their love, had no expiration date. The days that followed were quieter, but the memory of their journey lingered in every corner of their lives. They carried with them a renewed sense of curiosity and appreciation for the small wonders around them, the laughter of children in the park, the scent of blooming flowers, the warmth of the sun on their faces. Every step became a reminder that life, even after decades of shared history, still had surprises, joys, and adventures waiting to be discovered. Margaret and Henry's story spread quietly through Willow Creek, inspiring friends and neighbors alike. People began to see that age was not a barrier to adventure, that love could grow stronger with time, and that the simplest moments often held the most profound beauty. Their journey was proof that the human spirit, fueled by curiosity, courage, and companionship, could embrace the unexpected with grace and joy. Years later, their children and grandchildren would sit with them, listening to tales of lakeside villages, hidden meadows, and quaint inns where the fire always seemed warm. They would hear of laughter under the stars, of mornings filled with anticipation, and of moments where life had revealed its quiet magic. And each time, Henry and Margaret would smile at each other, knowing that the adventure they had begun yesterday had changed everything, not just for them, but for everyone who witnessed their story. Even now, on quiet mornings, they sometimes wake with the same spark in their eyes. The world may have its routines and expectations, but Henry and Margaret know that life's greatest adventure is living it together, embracing the unknown, and cherishing every fleeting, beautiful moment. Because sometimes all it takes is one decision, one step beyond the familiar, to remind us that the most extraordinary journeys are often the ones we least expect.